I'm having Clint share with me today in this message because I think that what we're going to talk about today is really highlighted in the relationship that Clint and I have, and we're going to talk about these important relationships in our lives. In the last few weeks, we've been talking about God's love, and in this whole series of transformation, last few weeks, it's kind of culminated in this view of God's love. In the Old Testament, the word is hesed, this special love of God, this unique, unconditional, never-ending, never giving up, never leaving love of God that is always with us, that's always pursuing us. And that's what we've been emphasizing. Last week we talked about how that love is not only displayed in us and not only how it affects us, but how it affects the people around us within the body of Christ, how we share that love back and forth. And then also in our community, how we share that love to people that feel far from God. It's that love that creates that bridge to bring them to Christ. And so today, though, we're going to talk about more specifically how we influence other people. And also some really important relationships that all of us need in our life so that we gain that love and that wisdom and then have a place to share it. So that's what we're going to talk about. You hear a lot about influence today. In fact, one of the words that were added to our dictionary last year was the word influencer. And you've probably heard that word. Especially with the advent of the internet and social media, influencers have become really, really important in our culture. And so here's what we want to do. We want to show you some of the top social media influencers. So let's see your social media savvy right now. Put up the first picture. Does anybody know who this is? Good, one person.
One person, wow, okay.
This is a Swedish guy named PewDiePie. And PewDiePie is special because he has 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube. And he makes millions of dollars every month by making YouTube videos. Yes, parents, your kids that just sit around and play video games and watch YouTube, there is a career in it. I mean, there really is. They could make a living. And there's others. Good.
All right, let's see. Let's test your knowledge on this one. So let's put up the next slide. Anybody know who this guy is? Okay, so we got a few more. All right, so this is Cristiano Ronaldo. He comes in at the top spot on Instagram, right under Instagram itself, with a whopping 242 million followers. Now, if you guys don't get this next one, I will be a little bit sad. So go ahead and put up the next one. Okay, so a little more well-known. So this is, go ahead and put the slide up, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with 205 million followers. And then we have our last one here. All right, been keeping up with them lately. All right, she comes in, so yep, Kim Kardashian, go ahead and put up the next slide, at 192 million followers. Now,
I feel bad for her. Only 192. That's it.
Well, yeah, she's fallen behind some of the other ones quite a bit. So, and all these people have something in common. They're all influencing people. They all make millions and more dollars than I do, and they have about 200 million more followers than I do. So, shameless plug, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, at Clint Weddle, you can follow me there. Add to my low count of followers on there. So, another influencer, you can go and put up the next slide. Selena Gomez, she comes in, she's in the top 5 on Instagram, and she shares a thought that I believe, really reflects the life that a lot of these influencers live. And she says, "I feel like I know everybody, but I have no friends. It feels great to be connected to people, but you have to have those few people that respect you, want the best for you, and you want the best for them." How many of you could say that you relate a little bit with her? You've got friends on social media, and I know I've got a little decent friends list on Facebook, but I can't say that I really am that strongly connected with certain ones that I'm friends with on there. Mm-hmm. And in this series, we've been talking about being transformed, and a big part of that transformation process is really building these deeper relationships in our lives, and those only come by allowing ourselves to be able to be open with another person in our life. And I remember when I first started here at the church, Tony had approached me and wanted to meet and connect more, and At that time, my wife and I had kind of come from a series of just painful experiences, some painful church experiences, and so I was really guarded, and I really had a lot of walls up, and I just remember being really hesitant, Tony, when you had asked me to meet with you, and I finally said, yeah, let's go ahead and meet, and through a series of just time and Tony speaking with me, I really began to develop trust with Tony and really allowed him to speak into my life, and ultimately that's why I'm up here today, because he really just pressed into me and spoke, God's heart into my life.
It's been good.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it too. So, yeah.
Part of a pastor's responsibility is to see what God sees in people. And that's part of all of our strength, is having God in us. It gives us eyes to see. And sometimes you see in people what they don't see in themselves. And this is one of the things why we need good people in our lives. And in your on the chair there, I gave you some notes today. And I would encourage you to take that out right now. There's pens in the pockets behind you there. And I want us to take a minute, because sometimes when you talk about people in your life, it can be so general that it doesn't mean as much. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of who are the top 5 influencers in your life.
You put down one of us, you get bonus points. So.
I mean, who are the people that affect how you live your life? And it can be a family member, it can be somebody at work, somebody at church, whoever it might be. I want you to list those, because as we go through this message, it's important. Now, there also may be some people on that list that aren't saints. They influence you, but maybe not in a good way. But you're friends with them, or you're connected with them in some way. I know a lot of people that are influenced in a negative way by somebody they work next to every day. And it's challenging for them. And that person influences their attitude and their perspective and everything else. And if that's the case, put them down. And as you do that, as we go through this message, I want you to keep that list in front of you, because we're going to ask certain questions about some of these folks. And maybe there's people by the end of this time today that you'll want to adjust on that list. Maybe people that need to be added. And maybe even people that need to be removed. So, you got some names? Good. Let me ask you a question then. Which person on that list do you have the most fun with? Just put fun next to it.
And then next one, ask yourselves, is who would be best at keeping a secret on this list? So you can just put secret by that name.
Third, who on that list knows you best? Not necessarily the longest. Sometimes that helps. But who knows you the best?
And lastly, who influences you on that list the most to follow Jesus? As you finish up that, we'll move into our next one. Today we're going to look at the different types of important relationships in our lives, and all of these that we're going to look at, they do play a pivotal role in our lives, in our growth process, and we have to be able to go deeper, as we said earlier. How many of you have ever dealt with a dull knife before? Some capacity, okay. So I was a couple weeks ago in my kitchen, and I was chopping up some food, and I'd been using the same knife over and over again for quite a while, and I realized, okay, my food's not really chopping up as well as I want it to. And then I remembered, oh wait, we have a knife sharpener in our little block that holds all of our knives. And so I took the knife through a couple of times, and it just made the knife just as good as new. And I was just thinking about how reflective that is of our relationships with each other. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. And in order for us to grow deeper and for us to mature deeper in our relationships with other people, we have to be, sometimes we have to be abrasive, and we have to be willing to, accept sometimes that sometimes that tough love input, that abrasive input in our lives. 1 Corinthians 4:15 says, well, first of all, our first point is the first important relationship in our life is that of a spiritual father and mother. And the reason why is because they provide wisdom and leadership in our lives. 1 Corinthians 4:15 says, "There are a lot of people around who can't wait to tell you what you've done wrong, but there aren't many fathers willing to take the time and effort to help you grow up." And Paul here is calling attention to his role as the Corinthian spiritual father. He founded the church at Corinth, and because of that, he could be trusted to have their best interests at heart. And these tough words that he had for them were motivated by love. And as I was going through this message, I was reflecting on my early years here at the church back in 2016 when I first started doing maintenance work. And I remember coming under the leadership of one of our elders, Vic Ruthig. And Vic's style is a little bit different than Tony's. He has, just a different style. But, I was just so grateful.
We call Vic the Hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's billboards, too, that have the hammer on there. And I just remember, Vic, the early years that you were speaking into my life. I mean, it was tough for me. I remembered meeting with Tony and certain ways that he approached things. But Vic, knows how to get a job done and really held me to those standards. And he wanted what was best for me, and he really wanted to see me grow and to mature in areas that I hadn't yet. And at the time, I didn't like it. I would go home and I would be frustrated and just wondering what the heck I was doing. But now looking back on that situation and that relationship with Vic, I'm just so grateful, Vic, for you and your input in my life. And I would just encourage all of you that if you're going through a relationship with someone that is maybe it is this abrasive relationship, maybe this person that has this more tough love in your life, to just really press into the heart of what that person, that person's heart, and see, God's heart in that. And that there's always areas that we can mature and grow in our lives. And if we really if we just take a posture of humility and know that God has something for us in that situation, you can reflect back and see just God do great things.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that I appreciate about Clint was he's very teachable. And that's one of the real qualities that you look for in somebody. Because if there is that humility he talked about and you're teachable, then you can allow people to speak into your life. I mean, if you're secure. Now, if you're an insecure person, then everybody's a threat to you. But one of the best things you can have in your life is a spiritual father or mother. Because they've lived life and they have some experience that you can gain from. I know I had spiritual fathers in my life, and some of them were very kind and gentle, and others were more abrasive like that. But you know what? Whenever I was in a mode of being teachable, I always got something from them. And you can get something out of every situation. And so I encourage you, if you don't have godly people in your life that are speaking into your life, some of you are new in marriage. There are couples in here that have been through 30 years, 40 years of marriage. They've learned something. Learn from those folks. If you need to connect with somebody that can help you and help be a spiritual father or mother to you and provide, and I think the words here are friendship and accountability. That's what they provide. Friendship that's the next one. They provide wisdom and leadership. They provide wisdom and leadership. I like what that great theologian Sylvester Stallone said. He said you need to have...
You got to say it like him too, Tony. You got to do it in the style.
Adrian, now. You need to have the expertise and the guidance of someone else. You cannot train yourself. I feel the same way about Christianity and about what the church is. The church is a gym for the soul. See? We need people in our lives. And that second relationship, and this is what I was referring to a minute ago, is spiritual brothers and sisters, because they provide friendship and accountability. Where, here's the difference. A father will come up and put his arm around you and say, let me talk to you about something. A brother will come up and punch you in the arm and go, come on, man, get it together. You know, you have that in your life? If you just have people that are telling you you're fine even when you're not doing well, or just flatter you, all that's going to do is make the road slicker to a negative place. You need people sometimes that will just speak the truth and love to you. And whether that's a spiritual father or mother, or a friend. You desperately need that in your life.
Ecclesiastes 4:10 says, "If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up." Really stop and think about, who is this person in your life that when you're going through the toughest times in life, when you're going through the most difficult situations and you're falling down, who is the person in your life that you have right now who is there to pick you up and to help you through that? Mm-hmm. And I've been so grateful for these kinds of friends in my life, but I also know that I've had people in my life who have not been the greatest influencers in my life. Pastor Craig Rochelle says, "It's impossible to live the right life when you have the wrong friends." And like I said earlier, I'm so grateful that I've been able to make a lot of good friends in my time here at the church. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I, we have been leading a young adult life group here at the church for going on about 4 years now, I think. And through that time, we have been able to see relationships form through that. I know a couple of you from our group are here in the room today, and it's so good to see you guys and joining us online too. But it's just been so encouraging through that time together to be able to see not only the deep relationships formed within our group, but also outside of the group and connections made there as well. And I would also just encourage you that, when we started coming here to the church, the life groups were in a transitional season, and we just didn't really feel like there was a young adult life group, and so we just really felt like God put on our heart that we needed to start one. And so sometimes it's not just about us getting the friends in our lives and us, hoping that the friends come along, but we also have to take the effort to be the friend. And when we do that, just great things come from it.
Absolutely. And the last relationship here, and this is one that I think many of us don't feel qualified for, but I think we are more qualified than we think, and that's spiritual sons and daughters. So we have spiritual fathers and mothers, we have brothers and sisters, and we have spiritual sons and daughters. And this doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you led to Christ or someone who you have a family connection with. This might be someone who you just meet at the church and someone who needs a coach. They need somebody in their life to help them. They need that relationship that I described earlier of a spiritual father or mother. And when you're, again, humble enough and smart enough. When we first started life groups, we were all concerned that there was affinity. Like we'll have young adult groups and this group for older people and this group for this group of people and this group for kids and so on. And what we found was people just went to a group more so because it was convenient. And the beautiful thing about that is most of our life groups for the longest time had people in them of all different ages. All different lengths of relationships, some single, some married, some had married for a long time, some were newlyweds, some had just had kids, some didn't yet. And there was this range of people, and everybody drew from each other's strength. If you're an older person, nothing will give you more of a reason to get out of bed than to know that you're modeling something for someone else. You're making a difference. Your life is not put on a shelf. When you retire, it doesn't mean you become ineffective. And there's this thing in our world today that retirement means you just go off in a corner and die or go play golf or something or stay in your house. And that's not what God intended. He built wisdom into your life, and that's meant to be shared with other people. Clint probably won't mind me sharing this. If he does, it's something we'll talk about next week. No.
Uh-oh.
No. Clint, told me a couple weeks ago, he says, this past week, actually, beginning of the week, he says, I'm working on something in my life, and I just want to be accountable to you. And he goes, it's getting up in the morning. I want to get up early in the morning and have that time with God every morning. And it's just a struggle. And so every morning this week at 6:29, I sent Clint a text that had a scripture about morning prayer on it.
I read it with blurred eyes, but I still read it. And then a minute later, I was up. So.
And why do that? Because I could say, well, you just got to get better, or good luck with that. But as a father, I want to help him. I want to help him get it. So a simple text, I'm up at usually an hour earlier, and a simple text that will help him.
Actually, your phrase to me was, "You don't want to know how early I get up."
I don't want him to feel like he's got to do the same thing, But we need that. Just little things that can help somebody else. Sometimes it's just that little bit of accountability and to help somebody and to challenge them. Why don't you do this? I'll help you with it. See, in life, in our world today, we are so scattered and people are all over the place. And as a result, we don't live long enough in one place or get connected with people in a way that people used to. We don't know our neighbors. We don't tend to know our coworkers because they come and go. And as a result, we hold back a little bit because we don't want to keep building those relationships just to let them go. But I'm telling you, the investment that you make in people's lives makes a difference. It was last night. Indiana had a big win yesterday, and Tom Allen texted me last night after they had beaten, who'd they play? Yeah, Wisconsin. And I guess they were on their way back, and he had texted, and we had just talked about something, and he had sharing with me what he appreciated. And I was telling him, as a spiritual son, how proud I am of how he's done there. And to hear just the world talking about his leadership. And this is the place. I'm not going to, lead something like a football team. But to be able to have influence in somebody's life that is an awesome thing. And as you get older, your life increases as you take the wisdom and you learn those experiences of life, and then you pass them on to another generation.
So there are ultimately 3 investments in these relationships. So you think about, how do we live these out? How do they come about? And so these ones that we've talked about today, we're going to kind of end here with some key investments that are really essential if we're going to see growth happen in these. And the first one is trust. So relationships have to reciprocate at the same level if we're really going to grow deeper. And one of the most important ones I can think about for this is marriage. And I know in my relationship with my wife, we've developed a level of trust with each other where we can confront each other on various things and talk about each other in an open manner. And I remember specifically one time where I was having a particularly rough week, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, I noticed you've been a little short-tempered this week and you've been a little bit extra angry." And my perfect response to her was, "What are you talking about? I haven't been angry. What do you mean?" Light bulb, okay, And so, she loved me enough, and she felt that there was enough trust there that she could tell me, that I was struggling with a lot of short-temperedness that week, and that's worked the other way too. I've been able to help her grow in certain areas, because I love her and I want the best for her, and because I trust her enough and she trusts me enough. It just, we're just able to have that kind of a relationships. And this doesn't just go for marriage, it goes for friendships too, And so we, asked you guys earlier on the paper to write down your list of people in your life. And so really on that list, who are these people, on this list? Who are those people that who do you trust the most, and who do you feel like you can develop those deeper relationships with? And 2 Corinthians talks about being equally yoked, and it says, 2 Corinthians 6:14, it says, "Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness, and what communion has light with darkness?" And this doesn't just go for marriages, it goes for friendships too. If we're really going to grow closer to God, we need to have other fellow believers, other fellow Christians, and people who want and have our best interests at heart in our lives.
Yeah. And it's not about that we don't connect with people that are far from God. We do that. But again, it goes back to influence. As long as we are having influence in their lives and they're not drawing us away from God, then I believe those relationships are important. We can't isolate ourselves just in Christian community. We've got to be out with people. We've got to connect with people that look different and have different views and are completely different from us. And the beauty of that is, as we extend ourselves out there and are transparent with them, which is the number 2 thing, transparency, when we begin to open our lives first, we initiate, we engage, We are the one who is vulnerable first. Why? You say, well, that's risky. What if I open my life and they don't open it back? That's okay, because your security comes from Christ. And because you know He loves you, even if somebody rejects you after you open your heart to them, you're okay. You'll heal because you have Jesus. And that person maybe doesn't. And they test that relationship to see if you will really be there and if you will stay committed. Parents that have adopted go through this constant testing. Will you leave me the way everybody else has? And you'll find that in relationships. You start dating somebody and then all of a sudden things will blow up. And you just have to be willing to take the trust, to give trust, and to be transparent in your own life. If you'll go first, people will open up.
And then lastly, it takes time. All these things that we've talked about today take time in our relationships with others. And I remember, when, like I mentioned earlier, when Tony and I first began meeting and my relationship with Vic, and wondering, with Vic, when am I going to get to this good point with him? And it happened, and we're good buddies now, and Tony and I the same way, we're good buddies now. And my relationship with my wife, that took time to develop trust with each other and develop the transparency with each other. So ultimately, if you're going through a phase where you just feel like things are just taking forever, you maybe feel like, I don't really have this person in my life. Give it time. God, really just pray for God's heart, and God will either allow you to be that friend in somebody else's life, or He will bring somebody into your life to be a friend.
That's good. And just to close this, here's what I want you to look at your list again. And if they're a spiritual parent or an elder or something like that, put that out to the side. And if you don't have one on there, we're going to pray in a little bit. Pray that God brings that person into your life. Who are peers or friends on that list? And then, are there any spiritual sons or daughters on that list? Because again, young people influence us as much as we as older people influence them. If Clint just doesn't come to sit at my feet. We do life together. I ask him about things. I say, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts here? What are your thoughts there? And I repent when, I've had a bad attitude or something like that. It's got to be reciprocating. That's what relationship is. So how many of you right now, and you don't have to raise your hand, but you have a spiritual father or mother in your life? Good. I'm just seeing nods, so that's what I'm going by. How many have good spiritual friends that lead you to follow Jesus? Good. How many have spiritual sons and daughters? Good, good. And here's what I want you to do today. As we wrap this up, I want you to maybe formalize that a little bit. Think about who are the important people in your life. Who are the spiritual parents? And acknowledge that. Maybe write them a note or text them or email them and say, thank you for this role you play in my life, and I want you to be able to speak in my life whenever you want to. I give you permission. That may take a gulp to do, but that's what you need. Somebody that loves you and can see things in your life you can't see. I always say you can't see the back of your own neck. You need somebody else to tell you when you got something hanging out your nose, And sorry, it's gross, but you get the point. Something in your teeth, maybe. There you go. Who are those people on your list you need to edit off? This person is just not leading you to Jesus. They are pulling you away. Sometimes, if you're not sure who that person is, ask your spouse. They go, that person's dangerous in your life. They don't lead you to a good place. And then finally, who are spiritual sons and daughters that you can communicate to and say, you know what, I am here for you. I'm here to help you whenever I can and be a friend. Now, we're trying as best as we can right now to get people connected. And the best way to do that seems to be online. So right now, we were counting up the other day, we really have, 6 different groups right now that are meeting. We have a men's group. You guys are meeting on Sundays, right? And then we've got a group that Clint and Lauren are leading for young adults, and they're mostly meeting online right now, and that's just the way it is. I start a group on Tuesday at 7 p.m. where we're going to take and dig deeper into this whole brain science, neurology, neurotheology thing that we've been looking at for 12 weeks and be able to really apply it and in practical ways. So we're going to talk about that on Tuesday nights. And Scott Miller's doing a group on outreach on Thursday nights at 7:30 and just how we can be more effective in reaching our world around us and taking bigger risks. And then there's a women's Facebook group that lets you know when things are happening among the women. And so you can go there as well. And so these are some of the places where you can get that information. I encourage you to at least maybe look at one of these groups, consider it, and we'll see in January how things look. We normally launch life groups at the end of January, but who knows where things are going to be. So we want to keep trying to do everything we can to facilitate us being able to connect with one another and have relationship. But these relationships with spiritual fathers and mothers, with spiritual brothers and sisters, and with spiritual sons and daughters, these are the kind of relationships that it's up to you to initiate and develop on your own. And then the groups are just ways to find those connections in those places. Got it? Good. Well, let's pray.